Hey team, you're about to experience my interview with Justin Rinaldi. He is the director of marketing and e-commerce for Safety Speed Manufacturing. Safety Speed manufacture cutting, routing, sanding, and edging equipment for timber. They bill themselves as the leading manufacturer of vertical panel saws. They sell through distributors and dealers, and they supply some of the biggest DIY big box stores in the United States and internationally. They have also a D2C website as well. And so Justin and I had a fantastic conversation about the challenge of, selling D2C, selling via distributors, selling via, into these large chain retail stores, and all of the things that need to be done to be successful across these channels, including influencer marketing, including content marketing, and the like. We had a great conversation, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my great pleasure to welcome Justin Rinaldi from Safety Speed to the pod. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you for having me on.
It's super cool to have you here. We're going to be together at B2B Online Chicago next week. We're going to be on a panel together. We're going to be doing some other things together. So really looking forward to that. There's only 2-3 major B2B conferences every year around the e-commerce and digital space. And this is the biggie, right? This is the one nobody wants to miss.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things. I'm a first timer for this one. I've heard so many good things from past speakers. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I went to the one, my first B2B Online was B2B Online Florida in October of last year. And everybody's telling me this was the big daddy. This is the one you don't want to miss. This is one that's about 2 to 3 times as big as the one we had in Florida. And to be honest, the one in Florida was amazing too. So I'm really looking forward to get so many B2B practitioners in one place at one time. It's a pretty rare opportunity, and especially all across the United States converging on Chicago.
Yeah, and especially the 3-4 days of actually being able to talk with fellow experts instead of doing Irish goodbyes with everybody you meet. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, and I'm probably potentially even looking forward to the after parties each night more than I'm looking forward to what happens during the day. I find that you can talk shop, and people are sometimes feel a little bit more free when they're not being recorded or on a stage. They feel, and especially after they've had a couple of drinks and a bit of food, then everybody lets their guard down, and everybody starts to get real honest real fast when they got that Dutch courage in them.
That's a good point.
Awesome. Listen, you are the head of e-commerce at Safety Speed. You're the director of marketing and e-commerce. So that's your dual remit there. And the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast is because as part of the podcast, we released a Monday mentorship episode, a Wednesday B2B episode, and a Friday tech episode. And the reality is there's a ton of amazing B2B practitioners out there, and they don't often get a lot of airtime. We hear the sort of B2C, D2C space, it's all over the headlines. It's the sexy thing. It's well-known household brands. And the reality is that most B2B brands out there are not household names. They're just not, they're not what every single person, when I go to the cupboard, I got a mug and I wear clothes and I do all these things around my house and I've got lamps and everything else. When you shop retail, B2C, D2C, you recognize all the products because there's stuff that we use every single day. But in B2B, oftentimes these are products that are only used in a business setting. They're only bought by business buyers, and they're only used in commercial or resale environments. And so it's a very different thing when you talk about B2B, isn't it?
Oh yeah, B2B it's really the definition of shopping has changed. Up until 3-4 years ago, I felt that there was a strong definition of B2B, but as technology has changed, it's really made a target customer anyone with a cell phone and a credit card. For me at Safety Speed Manufacturing, just to give some background on Safety Speed, so we make panel saws that are most often found in the big box stores where you go in to cut lumber down to fit in your car, so that way you don't have a 4x8 panel that you have to somehow figure out how to get back. So We also make a wide array of other woodworking machinery, wide belt sander, screw pocket machines, mainly for the woodworking and sign making industries. It's an industrial manufacturing company, and there's a lot of great things going on with American manufacturers right now.
Yeah, and I think that's oftentimes missed when the big news is offshoring, outsourcing. Even with me down here in Mexico, manufacturing is booming down here in Mexico. The rise of the super peso has meant that manufacturing costs have risen dramatically over the last 18 months here in Mexico, due primarily to all the nearshoring and dual shoring that happened post-COVID as people started to move their manufacturing out of China, out of East Asia, back closer to American shores or within the country, as is the case with you guys. And I think that this is a largely untold story, is this reshoring as opposed to offshoring and outsourcing. We now have reshoring, nearshoring, and dual shoring now becoming the norm across the board, because I think a lot of American companies and American brands, they got the fear of God put into them when all of their manufacturing out of East Asia just stopped almost overnight.
Yep.
And it created existential risk for a lot of these brands.
Yeah, that's for sure. And the one thing I'm seeing that I've seen more than ever in the last year or two is people actually care where the products are made. It's really funny with just on the branding side of making sure that the branding is clear, made in Minnesota, made in the USA, because a lot of people are actually, that's one of the buying factors for them right now, because they actually care where their money is going. They want to make sure that it stays local.
And I guess the reality is the market you serve, the likes of the Home Depots and the Lowe's and the big DIY stores, they simultaneously are having a massive push to buy and sell domestically made product. And that's where you can slot in quite nicely. Your go-to-market messaging aligns with your customer, your B2B customers' go-to-market messaging, and it's really harmonious. It just fits.
Yeah, and with a lot of our customers, they start as like the home hobbyist where they're the weekend warrior, but they find such a passion out of it that they eventually convince themselves that they're going to go full time. And then a couple of months later, they actually go full time because they're able to learn how to create videos, do their own marketing, create social content, where it brings a lot more fulfillment to them instead of their day-to-day job, or it's supplemental income with their day-to-day job where they do a couple projects on the weekend, they do some work here or there. It's woodworking has always been a part of our life in America, whether it's buying the really nice Amish tables. There's some great woodworking out there, and it's exciting to see how many people are having a vested interest in actually creating their own and getting into the machinery plant where they're moving into.
What's interesting about this is I think there's almost been a bit of a renaissance of the small niche craft woodworker, wood shop. I think that feels like it's making a comeback. I think on TikTok, probably half of the accounts I follow are small 1-man, 2-man, 3-man, woman band shops that are making bespoke pieces of furniture, or they have a range that they curate and they create at scale or semi-scale, but it's still small shops making really cool pieces of furniture, woodcraft, various other things, joinery. It's pretty amazing how what would traditionally be thought of as, okay, maybe this is a little bit boring, whatever. Some of these content creators around woodworking they're as creative with their content as they are creative with their woodworking. And it feels like they are just embracing this build in public model, build on social media model. It feels like they've just embraced it wholeheartedly. And that becomes inspirational for the home hobbyist to then say, look, with the right couple, 2, 3, 4 pieces of equipment, I don't need to go and spend $1 million on equipment. If I have 2, 3, 4 good, decent pieces of equipment, I've got a wood lathe, I've got some other small, and maybe I've got a jig table and a few other bits and pieces, I can actually do quite a lot at home. Maybe not to this standard, but it's inspirational, and I want to get my hands dirty, so to speak, and feel the material and actually build something with my hands. And it feels like there's a renaissance of that happening.
Yeah, you're right on. You're right on point with that, and I think it's the power of the community from within. Influencers are a part of my strategy, but it's not really an influencer, it's a brand shepherd. Someone that is a vested partner, that they're not just discarding whatever they get. They use it and they feature their content without being a sales push. And when we look at just how far the internet has come and with how over monetized of ads Google has become, people are going to social platforms and looking for identifiable people instead of going to Google because of how many ads you get before you actually figure out what you originally searched. So there is a huge community across the different social platforms of people vested within local communities, and that's been the greatest piece of social media, of how far social media has come on collaboration, shooting ideas off of people without physically having to be next to them. There's a strength in numbers, and I think we're really leaning into working with content creators, brand shepherds, really looking full at the bigger picture on how we can engage better with the woodworking community.
And some of those are creating content and doing brand deals, but they're also doing some other things that are helping to supplement. They might be just a small shop that does relatively small bespoke pieces, that's relatively small income, and they're now starting to supplement that. I've seen them putting on local clinics and classes in their shop. They'll say, look, hey, you can come once a week on a Friday afternoon or a Thursday afternoon. You can come for 1 2-hour woodworking shop. We charge you $15 or $20 or whatever it is to come. And then I've also seen some of them start to create their own video programs, video training programs, that they then sell those training programs online. So it feels like they're able to now generate, and then of course with the brand deals, maybe with brands like Safety Speed and other brands, they're able to now take what was maybe just either a side gig, a small passion, or a relatively small business, and they're now able to scale with digital channels and brand deals now to where they've got 3, 4, 5 different streams of income off of this core passion that they're living in their life every single day. And that just was not possible. Even 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, this was just not possible outside of social being able to effectively spread their brand and their content far and wide.
Yeah, and there's this just within the woodworking community, it's becoming a lot more regionalized. The Cabinet Makers Association does regional events. I think they're doing 5 or 8 different events where it's literally just talking nitty gritty with invested business owners in the Cabinet Makers Association, where it's 30 or 40 people who fly in from across the country to get better ideas. Like as they develop, the Cabinet Makers Association is more of a professional,
like an industry body
scale
kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, where their strength is putting on amazing programming for kind of the business that's been up and running that needs new ideas from each other. And they've really leaned into the regional events, maximizing on the membership to guide what kind of content it will serve the rest of the body.
Amazing stuff. And when we think about how long has Safety Speed even offered e-commerce full stop? Like, have they been doing this for years and years, or did they only start doing e-commerce once you came on board in the business?
I believe it was launched in 2015. I came on board in 2019.
Okay, so not that long in the grand scheme of things. It's less than 10 years they've been doing e-commerce, and I see that it appears that you guys use WordPress with WooCommerce as your e-commerce platform, and it appears primarily that this site is aimed at a D2C audience, right? That maybe either the home woodworker, the DIYer, maybe the one-off shop that needs to buy one piece of equipment, as opposed to necessarily your dealer customers, your dealer buyers that are resellers of your product. It doesn't appear, at least, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this is not a dealer e-commerce website.
Right. I am working on building out that piece of it for our distribution to be able to sell. But with our website, it's a simple WooCommerce website. We get a couple orders a day. It amazes me at what people are willing to buy online. The cost of the items, where they have all their information and they have enough information to qualify themselves without even contacting us that they need a 2,000 pound piece of machinery. Like, it's really amazing to see just the power of websites and the content. Content is key, regardless of what e-commerce platform you're using. The content is by far the most important piece to it.
And to your point, these are not cheap pieces of equipment. We're talking between $2,000 and $5,000 pieces of equipment that people are buying.
$2 to $20,000.
$2,000 to $20,000. This is not small, cheap, insignificant, no consideration, low consideration purchases. These are high consideration purchases that people are willing to put their business credit card in online and make this purchase.
Yeah, that's exactly it. My motto has always been, whether it's someone in accounting or it's an engineer, they need all the information to be able to complete the transaction online. That's where I've focused a lot of my effort in on the last 2 years or so, is building that out so that if it's someone in accounts payable with a credit card or it's that high level engineer, that they know what they're buying and why they're buying.
And who they're buying it from, and that it's a trusted source.
Exactly.
And as of today, because you don't support your dealers in the wholesale trade online yet, so I'm guessing that most of those dealer buyers today deal with a sales rep inside the business?
Correct. We have a couple of sales members who work closely with our dealers and only with our dealers in getting products loaded onto their website and providing them with the assets to be fully loaded.
And even the non-dealer B2B buyers, let's say it's a Home Depot or a Lowe's or whatever it is that wants to buy off you and actually use it inside their business, presumably they have their own sales rep as well, and they would deal with the
they're a
sales rep
corporate
for those
account.
wholesale purchases.
Yep, we have corporate account structure here.
Aha, makes sense. So like effectively a named account model.
Exactly.
Yep, and so it's ultimately your vision to facilitate all of that wholesale purchasing model via e-commerce channels. And I'm guessing that for your largest customers, like a Home Depot, for example, would they typically be EDI integrated with you guys? Because I know that the likes of Home Depot and the big boys and girls out there, they typically require you to support EDI ordering. Otherwise, they don't want to deal with you.
That's exactly the battle on where we're angling in on unifying systems through PIM portals and modernizing our entire website strategy. Hoping to lay the groundworks for that within the next 6 months.
Nice. And are you thinking that you'll try to continue to do that on WooCommerce for the wholesale side, or will you be deploying a separate, dedicated, proper B2B e-commerce platform for that?
I don't anticipate doing that within Woo. I've looked at it. Woo is a great platform for doing that kind of work, but it takes a lot bigger platform that's more robust. Shopware is one that I'm looking at pretty intensely for that kind of scope.
Yep. Makes sense. And I primarily consult to B2B merchants. And yeah, those sort of B2C and D2C focused platforms just usually don't get B2B brands there when it comes to that scale of functionality, because you need things like price lists per customer, you need restricted catalogs, you need different types of payment methods and different types of gateways. You have to have CPQ functionality, you have to have potentially punch out capability, EDI capability hanging off the back of that. So we're talking, it's much more of, to almost use a B2B term, you need more of an industrial strength commerce platform for those B2B customers, because their needs are so much higher, the requirements, because you're going to have such a long-term relationship with them. The AOVs are through the roof, the CLVs are through the roof with your B2B customer base, and their needs, because of the way that the relationships are built on a personal relationship to begin with, and then you're oftentimes creating products specifically for those types of customer groups, and you're creating price lists specifically for those types of customer groups. And so there really is this need for a more B2B focused capability than what your traditional B2C platform can provide.
There's only so many add-ons that you can kick into a website to make it work. It's all about finding the right enterprise solution, but also having the vision on what's realistic, the timeline, the cost, and different barriers that may come up.
And how has it been since you've been in the business? Has it been hard or easy, or maybe in the middle, around trying to help the rest of the business understand what the requirements would be to service those B2B customers digitally? Is that something that immediately the business understands, or is it no, actually that's why we have named accounts, that's why we have field sales, that's why we've got these inside sales reps, that's why we've got this? And have you had to, I guess, try to bring the rest of the business along on the journey? Because oftentimes when I go into consult, there can be quite a bit of pushback from salespeople because they see it digital as a threat to them. They don't see it as an augmentation to what they do and the services that they deliver. And they don't necessarily see all of the benefits of offloading a lot of their admin tasks and responsibilities to the e-commerce platform. They just simply say, we see this as a threat. We see this as a digital salesperson to replace us ultimately. And then even higher up in the business, oftentimes the leadership, especially if they're older and maybe they've got this traditional mindset around B2B that it's all person to person stuff and it's all about the relationship. They sometimes think, why would we want to do e-commerce? That's why we have salespeople.
Yeah, luckily we have pretty good leadership here at Safety Speed. President of our company, who I report to, Brian Donahue, he's really let me explore any avenue, and he's pro business in terms of staying ahead of the curve. And I think the biggest barriers for the replatforming is aligning everybody with making sure that everybody understands that every e-commerce platform is going to have its different set of features. It's not apples to apples, it's apples to oranges. There is no set standard for e-commerce platforms. What you get with one platform, you're not going to get with another. And then there's a whole piece of tying everything, unifying everything within our ERP, which can be challenging. So I think our team is really on board and excited for digital transformation because we are a pretty lean team here at Safety Speed. The goal is always to be making sure that our team is spending as much time possible on the higher initiatives, the revenue generating opportunities where we, even with the advancements of computer intelligence, where it cannot substitute that some of those tasks. It's keeping the team focused on the working together, but understanding what part of operations and the sales side is most important.
And it's also a very different proposition too when you start thinking, okay, cool, we now want to start extending some of these services digitally to our customers that we historically have always done personally. So maybe we've got customer service team that people can call up and ask questions to and everything else. And now, okay, maybe we want to start offering live chat to our B2B customers, not just to our D2C customers. So there's a whole, it feels like there's an entire mindset, not a just shift, but an evolution. Maybe you don't want revolution because oftentimes that's just so disruptive to the business that you can't, it's too disruptive, basically. You want an evolution over time and you want to roadmap that. But I also see in many cases that it requires you right from the very beginning, even before you start scoping the solution, before you start gathering your requirements and documenting them, before you start doing search and select for platform, we actually have to have and create an internal and an external adoption plan. And that starts with interviewing our customers, oftentimes saying, okay, if we were to do this, if we were to offer a B2B e-commerce portal, a buying portal that you could buy through, that you could submit requests for quotes through, configure products, see our catalog, see your pricing, see where your shipments are at, all that sort of stuff. If we could facilitate that easily without taking away the benefits of having a sales rep, an account manager assigned to you, what are the types of things that would make it a no-brainer for you to adopt this platform? If we made it available to you, what kind of features and functionality would be so important to you that it would make it an absolute no-brainer for you to start using this channel? And I find that oftentimes B2B brands in particular, it's less so with D2C and B2C brands, but I find that with B2B brands, they get a little bit myopic in terms of trying to figure out the ways in which e-commerce can make them more efficient, more profitable, have better retained margins, et cetera, and kind of almost thinking about it through the customer lens of a little bit of an afterthought. And they're like, hey, if it makes us more efficient and makes my salespeople more efficient, then that's a win, right? But at the end of the day, if the customer doesn't adopt the platform because it doesn't meet their needs, then you're never going to get ROI on what is admittedly a pretty big investment in B2B e-commerce.
That's always the battle, is being able to have the plan defined well enough to be able to justify the investment for an enterprise level solution, because we all know that the first 3 months are going to be spent onboarding the new platform, and it's really not until month 4 where you'd actually be able to see if it is working or not.
And I find that if you don't have the sales team on board and or the customer service team on board, because they're the ones that will typically have to be onboarding the customer into the platform, if they're not behind it, if they're not supportive of it, if they don't know how it works, if they haven't fully trained up on the platform, then they can't effectively and won't effectively onboard the customer. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. You've got to get both the internal and the external aligned and on the bus on this journey towards digital transformation.
Yeah, especially with potentially thousands of SKUs as well. That's another battle on how do we know that our customer base is educated to know the part number and identify what they actually need for it if they're looking at a replacement part. That's really for as much information that we have internally, it's always a challenge of making the right assets that allow the customer to be empowered, that empowers the customer to actually know what part they would need and then how to check out, or if they need additional parts. The customer experience is by far the number one priority, because evaluate different technologies, and with the different technologies on the market, being able to have all the information at fingertips is great, but if it takes 5 seconds to load the page, it's not going to be beneficial for the customer.
And you, I guess, also on the B2B side of the business, more so than the D2C side of the business, is the fact that you have really complex fitment information. You really have massive product deprecation and succession information that you have to track. You have cross-sells, you have upsells, you have bundles, you've got kits. You've got so many things that go into this B2B side of the business, and you're already talking about PIM solutions, et cetera, and the need to be able to organize the data, particularly the enriched data, all of the structured data attributes around a product and all of those product associations that typically do not live in an ERP because they can't. The ERP is not designed to be a PIM system typically. And so therefore, you need a system where you can aggregate, organize, structure, and then syndicate this data from. And oftentimes, B2B brands, they don't historically have a system like that. The ERP is the beating heart of their business. It is the single source of truth around product and customer data and price lists and everything else. And so when they start thinking about adopting digital channels, one of the first hurdles is, that's great, but how do we prep our product and our customer and our price list data for those digital channels to begin with? Hey team, I have a big favor to ask you. Please pause this episode and send the link of this episode to someone you know that you think would enjoy this content. Really appreciate you spreading the word. This is how we grow. We're not a Joe Rogan. We don't have big, massive advertising budgets, but we absolutely want to grow. We want to get the learnings from all of these episodes out to as wide of an audience as possible, and we need your help to do it. Thank you, and now back to your listening.
Yeah, and I think that's an area where, with all this computed intelligence craze, I've seen some really awesome solutions that can be like the gateway on unifying both platforms. And I think it's, especially in the next 6 months to a year, I think we're going to see more and more where different computed intelligence programs are going to be able to do it better and more efficiently. For the machinery, or for complex products, it's really challenging on actually training the systems to understand it well enough, and I still feel that there's a little bit of a barrier, but just in the last couple of months, I've looked at so many different platforms that can automate different Excel sheets with machine learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And even inside of these PIM systems, they either have machine learning or AI, and even just simple rule sets that can say, okay, if a product has this attribute and it has this attribute, then we're gonna concatenate those together, and we're gonna generate a third attribute from that. Or we're gonna take these 3 or 4 attributes, and we're now going to create the title or the name of the product from those attributes. Or what we're going to do is we're now going to have, okay, cool, in our image model, in our image file name model, we're going to have a certain syntax in the file names of our images, so that when we upload to the PIM in bulk, it automatically associates the right images with the right products automatically in the PIM system, so that when it's syndicated out to our digital channels, it all syncs up perfectly, right? And the other thing is that if you don't have that data organized in a meaningful, structured way with, for example, product attribute arrays, and if everything is unstructured, which in a lot of B2B businesses still, they might have a long description, like a long unstructured description for their products, but they don't necessarily yet have lots of great structured product attributes. And the downside of that is you then have to try to extract structured data attributes out of those descriptions, either in an automated way or trying to do it manually. Then secondarily, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the channel specific data that we need is also there, because some channels require different data than others. So for example, if you were going to be selling on Amazon business, the way that they structure their attributes is very different to oftentimes how we would structure our data for a B2B e-commerce website or a D2C e-commerce website. And so we need to think about and look through the channel lens that we're going to be syndicating this data to make sure we can support those channels in our data sets.
You're absolutely right on this, because it's really 300 different products is no different than 3 million if the data is all misconstrued. So it's you having the bare bones at working with smaller data sets up front is so important to make sure that before you apply to the rest of the products and that the structure is in place, because every product's going to be different. It's going to have different categories, and I feel that it's no different than building out a website where we're laying out the site map, and the content hubs are the most important piece of it because everything else falls underneath of it. Same goes for this type of work, where it's so important to have the vision for it and actually talk with other people within the business that it would make sense for them when it crosses their operations.
Yeah, it makes sense, because obviously if you've got a business systems person that owns ERP and ERP data, and you've got to integrate into and out of the ERP for the rest of your digital systems, you're going to need them on the bus. Otherwise, you're not going to get very far.
Exactly.
And CFO as well, because they're the ones writing the checks, and usually they own, ultimately, usually the CFO or the financial controller is the one that owns the ERP in the end anyway, because usually all your financials are done in the ERP.
Yep, that's exactly it.
And for you guys, because you're a manufacturer, do you also have a manufacturing, like either manufacturing or light manufacturing module that's part of your ERP or separate to your ERP but integrated with it? And then do you have to have a WMS as well that manages all of your inventory holdings and all the BOM components to make up these finished? Talk me through those back office systems other than the ERP. As a manufacturer, you need to make all this happen.
Yeah, so right now at Safety Speed, we are a little bit separated. We have the platform that does the bombs and payment info. The e-commerce piece of it is really just a part. It's living in its own controlled environment, and because all of our machinery is built to order.
Okay.
It's just part of it, where because we're an American manufacturing company, all of our machinery is built to order, so we have a couple products that we have stock of. So it's our primary goods, our machinery is all built to order. So it's not as big of a hurdle for us because we are not in CPG. We are not selling 100 units a day on Amazon. So we've been lucky to have avoided a lot of these hurdles that are plaguing others in the e-commerce space right now, because I know it's getting more and more challenging because there is a need. There's more and more wants that we need to be able to get better at from our customers and prospective customers.
Yeah, and I guess the reality is if and when you get this B2B e-commerce capability up and running, that could potentially put pressure on the volumes of the business, because you potentially will be doing more volumes through that channel, because presumably you then can acquire more B2B customers through that channel, because then more people will know that you actually manufacture these goods. Your catalog can then be exposed. And is it your intention or your vision to have an open catalog B2B website, or to have a fully gated B2B website, or some kind of hybrid of the two? Because it really depends on whether you see your B2B e-commerce channel as a customer acquisition channel too, or whether you're seeing it as, hey, this is purely for people that are already our customers.
Yeah, our current framework is our pricing is on our website, and we do have our dealer locator, so people can find the dealer closest to them. I do not plan on gating it. There's, for someone to become a dealer of ours, there is a little bit of a process to go through to verify.
Onboard them.
Yeah, and make sure that they're the right fit for a company,
Mm-hmm.
because all of our dealers they're a vital part of helping our company, and it's being able to leverage them in their physical location, their storefront. It's really vital for us, where we have a really good group of distribution, and when appropriate dealers come through, we're more than happy to onboard them. But the overall goal is to one, serve the customer as well as serving the dealer, because in a lot of cases, the end users are on a bunch of different email lists. They're getting a bunch of different marketing. I've seen there's loyalty issues with how people operate. Back when I first joined, even 5, 6 years ago, there was very high loyalty, but now with how far the internet has come, and you can't even tell what's an ad and what's not an ad from the Google Shopping versus normal shopping products. It's a fine line to walk, and it's part of the challenge of separating marketing and e-commerce and keeping them in sync.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about that. And have you heard of a platform? I actually recently had these guys on the podcast. You ever heard of a platform called Locally?
I have not.
Yeah, I would encourage you to have a look at that. I can even make an introduction to Mike over there at Locally, the founder of Locally. I think this would potentially be quite,
That'd be sweet.
I'm seeing more and more that B2B brands, not just D2C brands, historically D2C brands have maybe done this, but more and more B2B brands, instead of just showing a dealer locator, they want to show an inventory locator. So they want to be able to be like, whenever somebody comes to your website, whether they buy directly or whether they buy through a dealer or whatever, you want to be the font of all knowledge around where your product is actually available to be purchased. Not just who in theory carries it, but who actually has it in stock and in that moment that they can go and get it immediately if they want to. And I'm seeing a big shift in that direction where manufacturing brands like yours, they want to hold all that information. And they want, so whenever somebody comes to the website, whether they're a D2C customer, B2B customer, doesn't matter, you will tell them, hey, if you want to go and get this product today, this is where you can go and get it. And it feels like that is where the future of commerce is going, where the manufacturer themselves, instead of just saying, hey, we've got this list of 20 dealers. If you want this product, go and ring the 3 that are closest to you and see if they've got what you want. Now it's no, we're actually going to tell you where you can get this product, even if you choose not to buy it through us D2C.
Yeah, and with how industrial our machinery is, that's always the balance, trying to find that happy balance, because generally our panel cells are 10 feet wide by about 5 feet tall. It's a little bit more challenging for having really good representation, as well as having 20, 30 different variations. Our biggest concern is getting an appropriate customer what they need for the work they're doing, and really qualifying them down, even through the videos on our website, on making sure that the prospective customer is clear, because anybody can go into a big box store and see that they want this, and
Yes.
it's first, that we're always trying to place more machines, more visibility, but we're at a disadvantage just with the size of our goods to begin with. So.
And the complexity of those goods.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I guess that's where dealers help, because if let's say I'm a woodworker, or I'm setting up a brand new shop, and I walk into my local dealer and I say, hey, look, I need X to do Y. And then they go, cool, let's talk about that a little bit more. Let's understand what kind of volumes you think you're going to be doing. Let's understand the size and scale of the substrate you're going to be cutting. Let's talk about what materials you're going to be working with. Let's talk about all these different things. And they're almost like a guide, right? They can guide them through that discovery process of, okay, cool, instead of just saying, you want this saw, I'm going to ask you 20 questions that we're going to qualify this down. Then I'm going to tell you, okay, cool, this safety speed product is going to work for you, but you need these modules, you need these components, you need this, you need this speed, you need all this stuff. And then they can effectively order it on behalf of that customer through you as a dealer.
Exactly. That's the strength of our dealers. We have a lot of awesome dealers who have machines on the floor in Missouri, Texas, Louisville, California. The tricky thing is that the person that needs it hot, generally, they're always in the middle of nowhere. So it's always, generally, it's just a balancing act of balancing our production and really working with the customer to get it as quickly as they can, because a lot of our machinery is on 2 to 3 week build time, so it's not insurmountable. We're not working with 6 months. Generally, the average is a week to 3 weeks, so it's not insurmountable. And if we have enough communication, we always try and shake things around depending on the production schedule.
And how important to you is your dealer network when it comes to getting feedback, new product development, product enhancements, product extensions? How important is the dealer I guess, ecosystem to you guys when you're thinking about trying to make sure that you have the most ideal product market fit that you can find? How important is that dealer feedback?
Oh, it's vital because different parts of the country have different needs. Down the woodworking down east, and there's so many different sawmills in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi. There's a strength in different parts of the country. Meanwhile, out west, there's a lot more truss applications on like even modular homes in different parts of the country. So it's really important to focus in on identifying where the businesses are and what they specialize in, because we have dealers, we have niche dealers that work only with truss companies, and that so being able to approach them and even work through creating new products, new iterations, and work closer with them is vital. Our dealer network is so important for us. Being able to work collaboratively to be able to provide service to their customer, as well as we have dealers that use our panel saws in their operations for cutting down sheet goods for their customers, like the Home Depot and Lowe's model. So it's any chance we get to get feedback and reach out and approach the dealers, it's always something that we're always looking to do.
And when you think about that new product development, I'm guessing that you aren't the only ones in the United States that make these types of saws. I'm guessing that you at least have one or two other competitors in the space. But again, I go back to that dealer communication, that dealer channel. It feels like that is where the stronger the relationship you have with your dealers and your larger trade customers, it feels like the closer the relationship you have with them and the better service you can provide them, the bigger the moat you build around your entire brand.
Exactly. The ecosystem is so important, especially like on the service side where being able to service our dealers' customers, even if they have a 20-year-old machine and they need a part or two, just being able to have our team internally work with them, get them what they need in 2 to 3 days is so important, because that's where working with the dealers and customers, that's where we build brand loyalty, is having the strong relationships and building trust, even on 20, 30-year-old machines that we still service, provide support on.
And have any of the dealers yet approached you guys and said, hey guys, you don't do e-commerce for us now. You don't offer e-commerce for us today. We'd love to be able to buy from you guys online. It would be faster. It would be easier. We could track our shipments online, et cetera. We could see your whole catalog, et cetera. We could see fitment data. We could see all this different spec data, et cetera, without our sales rep having to email it to us or send PDFs to us or whatever. We could self-serve a lot of the stuff that we do today if you offered e-commerce. Is this kind of vision for B2B e-commerce, is this top down, coming from in the business, bottom up, meaning your dealers are crying out for this, or is it a combination of the two?
Yeah, I think with our distribution partners, we have a pretty good approach on providing them with the Excel file for getting the product with the product attributes, the short, long description, the SEO, and everything. I do feel that it's more of a need and a want, so that way anybody within their organization can complete the transaction, as opposed to the one that's been working with us for
the one
procurement
years. Specialist.
I think it's a combination of it's as we move towards a fully digital world, it's going to be a necessity. So.
Yeah, and I guess the needs also of distributors, dealers, and trade customers, they're slightly different, right? And the kind of data that they need, the kind of data that they want, how they want to repurpose that, how they want to position that, how they want to market that, how they use that. In some cases, if it's just a trade customer, then they only need that information to make a buying decision, not necessarily a reselling decision. And so it feels it's probably going to be a little bit easier to hit and meet those wide variety of needs depending on the type of B2B customer it is, or that segment of B2B customer. It's probably going to be a little bit easier to fulfill those needs through digital channels than it is through individual unique processes inside the business, manual processes inside the business.
That's definitely it. The goal is always to get 80% for all parties involved, and that's good. That's the biggest challenge, is getting where everybody's on board and satisfied with what they need. So.
And when you're talking about ROI inside the business, when you're talking to the bosses, the leadership team, the board, whatever it might be, plus maybe sales team and customer service and other stakeholders inside the business, when you're talking to them about this B2B e-commerce capability, are you contextualizing it through the lens of efficiency, customer acquisition, revenue growth? Like, what are the key themes that you're saying, if we can nail these 2 or 3 things, this is going to generate incredible ROI on these projects? Because it's not a one and done thing, right? It's once you go down this path, sure, there's an upfront, pretty significant upfront investment to get the e-commerce site up and running, or the EDI solution, punch out solution, et cetera, up and running, system integrated with ERP and other systems within the business, marketing automation, et cetera. But then there's this ongoing cost. There's not only the annual licensing cost, but then there's the enhance and extend cost and data as an asset cost. And so there's a lot of both upfront and ongoing cost. And by definition, that means there's some opportunity cost associated with that, because if you do that, you can't do certain other things. So what are the 1, 2, or 3 lenses that you're helping the business see this program of work through that says, hey, this is going to generate some pretty massive ROI for us?
Yeah, I think for me, it's being able to justify the where it frees up the rest of the team, just how much time it frees up, because time is money, and it's a little hard to contextualize until it's actually implemented, especially with the different startup processes for getting everything in place. Until it's working swimmingly, it's hard to visualize. So that's the primary barrier. But I think just from the UX side, it's something that will be done hopefully sooner than later, just for unifying different shareholders within the company, being where we need to be within the 5-year plan. It's important not to rush into these decisions either, because every part technology is changing over the last year or two. Like, some of the solutions I looked at 2 years ago aren't around anymore right now. So I think that there is some instability within the tech market. That's just being cautious and really walking through the A to Z steps on choosing the right platform and actually setting the right KPIs to justify going from A to B to C to D all the way down to Z.
And how important is it on your sort of scale of considerations? Because what I have found is that oftentimes the partner that you're going to be working with through the implementation or the initial consultation phase, then the implementation phase, oftentimes is at least as important as the tech selection, because at the end of the day, you're going to be joined at the hip with them for a very long time. You're usually not going to be doing this implementation yourself, and it's usually not going to be the vendor doing the implementation, because they're a product company. They're not a professional services company. And so most of the major platform vendors work through partners that do the implementation. You're not going to go to Shopify or BigCommerce or anybody they're not going to be doing your e-commerce implementation. You're going to be working with agency partners to implement that. And how does that factor in to your technical decisions? Because obviously you need to have trust and faith in any partner that you would select to go on this journey with you.
Yeah, it's so incredibly important. Just if we look at the role that agencies have historically played, a lot of the agencies are being forced to get into niche partnerships based on platform usage, because of how easy it is right now to build a website. So that's being able to trust agencies and actually building the relationship on the technical side is so important for me, because I'm a fully recovered web developer. So I'm very technical when I need to be, but actually getting the agencies who can actually back up who can talk technical.
Walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly, that they can do that. They have the vision on what needs to be done, and it's not, I guess, setting the process and working through it together, because all these platforms have different agencies that are better for different, because of the specializations and how focused agencies are now becoming. It's really important about finding the right partner together. So.
Yeah, and I find that to be even more important perhaps in B2B e-commerce, simply because there are fewer B2B e-commerce specialists in the market, full stop. Like, every agency and their dog specializes in DTC and B2C, but very few specialize in B2B, and even fewer specialize in more than one B2B commerce platform. And very few have significant multi-year, multi-project experience in B2B commerce as well. And so it feels much more like finding a needle in a haystack from a professional services perspective in the B2B side than in the D2C side.
That's what I'm looking forward to, learning more about B2B Chicago. It's going to have all the main players being able to actually talk and walk through different options and being able to be transparent that, hey, it might not happen in 6 months, may not happen in 9 months, might happen in 12 to 18 months. And building the relationships while everyone is present and being able to talk with different partners. So that way, when the time is right, when it is time to go full steam ahead, that we're not running around without any direction here.
Love it. I've had tons of these people on my podcast too before, so I'll be happy to make any introductions you like once we're there, because I know most of the people that are going to be attending, so I'll be happy to make any introductions you want.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Listen, Justin, this has been nearly an hour. It's absolutely blasted by. It's been such a great conversation. I've learned so much from you. Now as we come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to my guest. I get to let them ask me one question, any question they like. So, Justin Rinaldi from Safety Speed, what's your question for me today?
How will international commerce change in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, very good question. I'll speak to this through the lens of B2B commerce specifically. Look, I think that modern commerce solutions for B2B already have internationalization in mind. And what I mean by that is they usually will support multi-currency, they'll usually support multiple language, they will usually support multi-location warehousing, they will usually support multiple price lists in multiple currencies, depending on the customer's destination. We also now have inbuilt and third-party tax management platforms like Avalar that can plug in to automatically help manage international taxation rules and tax remittance rules as well. So I see internationalization as being absolutely critical to the B2B space, particularly as domestic markets may, for example, not dry up, but maybe they falter. And so I think a lot of B2B brands realize now, if their historical focus has been, say, 100% on the USA, and that's great, as long as America's growing, and that's great. But I think what they're realizing, there's broadly speaking, there's two ways for these B2B brands to dramatically de-risk their business. One is to become a marketplace. So very rarely nowadays do we see pure manufacturers, meaning that they only manufacture 100% of their catalog. Oftentimes, they're also distributors, meaning that they sell complete packages of solutions where they might manufacture 20, 30, 40, 80% of their catalog, but then the remainder of their catalog, they're a distributor of somebody else's products as well. And so I think that model of either holding inventory as a distributor and manufacturer to help de-risk their business, and or internationalizing their business. That's the second biggest way, is to internationalize their business. Is to say we're gonna prove out the market by selling on international B2B marketplaces to begin with. We're going to prove out that demand before we actually create like a regional microsite, or before we set up a cross-border commerce system, right? And so I think there's stepping stone ways that these B2B brands can, with relatively low risk, prove out the TAM in a given market and then tiptoe their way into that market at relatively low cost. And that may mean initially that even if they don't do the local marketplace option, maybe initially they only work with one or two powerhouse local distributors, and they have 100% distribution-based model, as opposed to even a dealer model, direct to dealer model in that market. They may say, okay, we're not going to sell directly to dealers in that market. We're going to only sell via distributors, and then all the dealers can go to those one or two distributors in that market. So there's a few different ways to attack this, but top down, internationalization, absolutely one of the smartest ways to de-risk a B2B business, for sure.
Yep, that's one thing I have on my radar for 5-year outlook as well. So thank you for that.
Love it. You're absolutely thinking in the right direction. And Justin, if people want to reach out to you, they want to have a conversation with you about Safety Speed, about their products, about e-commerce full stop, is it best that they just I'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, as well as the Safety Speed website in the show notes. But other than that, how do you like people to reach out and have a conversation?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, email me, text me. I'm an open book here. So
Justin, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've learned a ton. I really appreciate your time. Can't wait to catch up with you in Chicago. Thank you so much. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to to learn how we can help you scale your business.